Hello and welcome to this year's festive tech calendar. My name is Christian Lechner and I'm already well prepared for this session in the festive season. I am a development architect at SAP and I'm also a Microsoft MVP in the area of Azure. And today I would like to share the fun that I have with working with the Azure Developer CLI. So let's take a look what we are talking about today. So in this session, we will take a look at the Azure Developer CLI and how it can increase your productivity in developing applications and bringing them to Azure. We will especially focus on one topic, and that is how can the Azure Developer CLI help you with creating brand new applications in a very well-guided way with best practices underneath. And also how it can support you in bringing your brownfield, your existing projects under the control, so to say, of the Azure Developer CLI, and then benefit from all the goodies that come from the Azure Developer CLI. Now, as you can already see, we will not have any slides within this session, so we will just look at some pages and the rest will be diving into the code. Now, having said that, let's get started. Let's check out what the Azure Developer CLI is all about. So basically, there is a very, very good description of the Azure Developer CLI on the learn.microsoft.com page telling you what it is about. I will now shortly highlight the main points what the Azure Developer CLI is all about. So basically, it's an open source tool, which is already cool because we can then take a look into the code. That aims to accelerate you, or to be more specific, to get your applications from your local development environment into the Azure cloud. I mean, that's kind of the baseline. However, in order to achieve this, the Azure Developer CLI provides best practices, supports you in a very developer-friendly way, and we will see that from the command line in a second. And it also brings in more than just bringing your code to Azure. It helps you with setting up the infrastructure as code. It helps you with CI/CD topics, and it also brings in goodies like dev containers. Now, how does it do that? In order to achieve that, what the Azure Developer CLI provides is so-called extensible blueprint templates, or short templates. And those templates kind of encapsulate everything that you need in order to get started with a brand new application and have already everything in place that you need in order to have a, let's say, very, very professional setup with respect to your application. Now, those templates are available online. You can create own ones. You can take the ones online, extend them. So there is a lot of things that you can do with that. We will also take a look at that in a second. Now, what would be the typical AZD flow? Well, basically it would be selecting a template and then running AZD init with that template. And after that, well, you can mingle around with the template and bring it up to the cloud, running AZD up. Now, we will not dive into the depth of running AZD up. We will more focus on the first 2 points and how you can tweak them in order to fit your needs. Now, before you can start, of course, with the Azure Developer CLI, you have to install it. And that is really easy. So basically, making a long story short, it's supporting every operating system. And just take the package manager that you like, be it Brew on Mac, be it Chocolate or a Winget on Windows. And there are pre-compiled packages for Linux on Debian and RPM. So everything's there. And if that doesn't fit your needs, you can also use a scripted approach on PowerShell or Bash or wherever. Now, what I did, I already installed it. So let's take a look. I have the AZD already available. So let's check AZD version. I'm in version 1.5, which is the latest one at the moment when recording this session. Now, what we saw before was I should kind of select a template. So I would assume that there is some template command in there that will help me with those templates. And yes, there is. So we have an AZD template command, which gives you, or which allows you to list all the templates that are available, to show details of the templates. And there is one interesting thing. You can also manage the sources of the templates. Okay, that's cool. Okay, then let's start with AZD template list, right? So let's do an AZD template list and see what we have. And whoa, we have a lot here. Scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up. Yeah, there are really quite some some templates here for my applications. They have a name. Okay, that's kind of short description, I would say. They have a source, which is awesome, AZD. Okay, that's awesome. And there is a repository path available that you can, as a link, that you can use in order to dive to that one. Now, where does AZD know where to fetch them? We'll take a look at that in a second. That must be the sources, I guess. And there is this awesome AZD, well, source where we get it. So what is that? That is basically, let's say, a community project that was initiated by the AZD folks, by the AZD team, in order to share templates. In order to share their templates, but also in order to share templates from the community. You find it on the azure.github.io awesome AZD. And this is really a complete library that consists of 76 templates. Now you can at a first glance already see if it's from Microsoft, or like you see here, or if it's from the community like you see here. And then you have a short description, you have a little bit of tagging. So what hosting environment is used for the app, what persistence is used for the app, in which programming language or programming model is the implementation done. So that's already quite cool. And you also get already the initialization via copy pasting it. That is cool. Now, you can of course also get a more deeper insight on how to instantiate that. You get a bit more information about the different resources that are in there with corresponding short links. So that's quite cool. And you can also view them on GitHub, because they are all on GitHub and they follow a specific structure that's necessary in order to be used by the Azure Developer CLI. You can of course also search for that. You can filter for that. So hey, everything there, that's really cool. Now, in order to get things started and in order to see what such a template, or what the instance of such a template looks like, let's just instantiate one such template. And that can be done by AZD init. If I would now start AZD init this way, it would ask me to select a template, but I can already specify one. And I have already used several templates, and what I will do now is one of the very basic templates that the AZD team supplied for us, and that's a to-do app which consists of a front end and a back end. A to-do app written in Node.js using MongoDB or a Cosmos DB with Mongo as a backend, and using Azure Container Apps as the compute or the hosting environment. Now, when I do that, what it does is the AZD init initializes the template. And what I have to do is basically one thing. I have to enter an environment name, which is basically a logical grouping of your environment variables. So think about it like if you would structure your application in dev test prod, then one environment would be dev, for example, where you have some very specific environment variables. Now, let's call this Festive Tech Demo as environment. And yeah, the project is initialized. And what you can see already at the first glance, it has 150 files to commit. holy guacamole. That's quite some stuff. So let's take a look at what is in there, leveraging VS Code. So what you can see here now in the outline, and don't get confused if I look at this side of the picture, because there I check if I'm streaming or recording the right window. So what do we have here? We have quite some layout here, which you might or might not have expected when kicking off the instantiation. So let's shortly walk through it. There is one directory which is called source, which of course contains the source code of the application, so the application code. And as I said before, it consists of two parts. There is an API part, which is a Node.js app, and there is a web part, which is a Node.js app. And you have several sources underneath. It's a quite typical structuring from my perspective for a Node.js app containing those two APIs or offerings. Then that's already quite nice. There is some testing pre-thought within the template, which is something that we as developers sometimes might forget maybe, but that's already there. That's cool. Then, as mentioned before, we have the infrastructure as code available. And the template that I have chosen for this demo is based on Bicep. So basically AZD provides you with functionality around Bicep as well as Terraform. Now, as you can see here, that's also quite nicely structured. We have a main Bicep file, which is the source of all the infrastructure as code, which contains a ton of parameters, and then sets up your container app, your for the hosting, the front end, the API back end. You get the database, and in addition, so that's why I like AZD a lot. It doesn't just set up your app with persistency and the compute. It also gives you some further best practices, like having secrets stored in a key vault in a secure manner, in having, like you see here, monitoring available. Then as an optional input, you have the API management that you can plug in between the front end and the back end. That's purely optional. And as you can see here, it's already quite modularized. So there are basically two areas where the modules come from. One is called core, one is called app. And that's also nice structuring here. So you have some reusable blocks that are provided by the AZD team around different areas like databases, like hosting options. So you have AKS, you have app service, you have container apps, you have functions, around monitoring, networking, search, and so on and so forth. So that's really cool. And of course, you have your app folder, which contains also, from my perspective, in a very well-structured manner, the layout of your application, be it of your application-specific assets, I should say, be it the database, the web front end, or the API. So that's already quite cool. And thinking about, well, maybe I need to adopt something. Well, it's cool to have those pre-defined building blocks that you can use in order to enrich your app. So bringing in some AI or something like that. Then there is one more thing that I would like to stress, because prefixing resources is always a topic. And there is some abbreviations JSON that is also following Microsoft's best practices around the prefixes for the resources, and that's used within the main.bicep file. We see that here. That's where the abbreviations come in. So that's already quite cool. Now, that's one part, that's the second part. And then, of course, as I said before, we also have CI/CD up in the game. So we have some GitHub and some Azure DevOps workflows, pipelines predefined, which basically leverage the, let's take a look here, the Azure Developer CLI as the tool in order to provision the infrastructure, in order to deploy the app. No secret here, but cool to have it. And of course, there's also a dev container. And what I especially like, it's a dev container without any Docker file, but just leveraging features, giving you the right extensions, already pre-thought for the GitHub code spaces. So that's also quite useful from my perspective. Now, the last part that I want to highlight is kind of the one thing that brings everything together. That's the azure.yaml file. Now, no, I don't want to do that. The azure.yaml file is the manifest of your Azure Developer CLI project. This YAML file is backed by YAML language server, so you can check out this URL in order to see what options you have. And what you can see here, it already contains some basic options like a name, the metadata, which template is used. That's something that I think is especially useful in enterprise contexts, because that way, if you update templates, you can check which project is using maybe an outdated template. Then we have some service block, which specifies the web and the API service. It basically tells where the source code lives. It says which language it is using, and it says which host is used. And due to the backing via the YAML language server, you have some type of hat support here. So for example, you see which languages are supported. You can do the same for the hosting. So you have AKS, app server, as I said before, as you saw in the infrastructure as code folder. So we had here the container app. Now, what you might wonder is, where the heck is the infrastructure? We have the infrastructure as code, but where does AZD know what to instantiate? Well, that's kind of, let's say, convention over code. So when you put your infrastructure assets into an infra folder in the root folder of your project, and if you're using Bicep, then AZD automatically knows what to do. However, you can also define a specific infra block if you don't want to follow that. And I think GitHub Copilot is not correct here. So you can specify a path, which would be, in our case, the infra. No. Come on. And then we have a provider, and there we have Bicep or Terraform. So in our case, this would be Bicep. And if you would write such a block, you can leave it out. If you would now, for example, use Terraform instead, you have to specify it in order to point AZD to the right tooling it is using to bring the things together. Now, there's one further thing that I want to highlight, because you might now also ask yourself at some point, how does AZD know that this service needs to be deployed to this infrastructure? There is no link. In the infra block, I can just say, where does my infrastructure assets lie? And this is part of your infrastructure setup. And what you do here is you tag the resource that should then be hosting your app with a tag that has the key value AZD service name. And as service name, you exactly say or key in the service name that you have specified within your YAML file, within your manifest. And this is how then things come together and AZD knows what to do. So I hope you agree that those templates are really cool. So they really help you with setting things up. They already provide a very well-defined setup. From CI/CD, infrastructure as code, source code, even testing is pre-thought. You have a very slim and I think very useful manifest. That's really quite helpful. Now, However, what we saw was that when doing an AZD template list, I think we got all the templates that are available with the awesome AZD source. And that might be too much. So within a company, maybe I just want to use very specific languages. Maybe I want very specific hosting options. Now the question is, how do I achieve that? Can I even achieve that? So let's check once more how this looks like. So we have this AZD template. Template, if I write it the right way, it would also help. AZD template, and there we have this source command. So let's check what this does. So we have AZD template source. Maybe that gives us what we want, what we need. Yeah, that doesn't look too shabby. This AZD template source does some add. So it adds AZD template sources for a specified key. Okay, cool. It allows you to list the configured sources, and it also allows you to remove sources. Okay. Let's go on. There are always some examples, and that is really what I like. I don't know how much you struggle sometimes with CLIs, but I do. And having those examples in there really helped me a lot to get started with some first thing than just saying, hey, these are the commands. You can somehow combine them with some flags and some optional flags. Have fun and find out how to do that. AZD goes a completely different way and really helps you there with these examples. And what's so difficult giving examples, right? So let's say let's clear it first, and then let's say AZD template source list. Then we should see here one list. Okay, that's pointing to some location. We have the key, we have the name, we have the type. So this is now interesting. Did we see that type before? For type, we could only specify file and URL. So that seems to be something very special, this awesome AZD. So we can add sources via the type file and via the type URL, where we can then specify the location. Okay, that makes sense. However, where did this thingy point us here? So this is a link, and I already have that one open. So let's have a short look at that one. This is how the awesome AZD templates are structured. So we have a title, a description, a preview, a website, and author source tag. Now, if you would have a template that has this structure and would hand that over via, you store that on GitHub and you hand that over via URL, that won't work. This is a very specific structure that you can use for, that the AZD folks can use for their awesome AZD area. But this is nothing that you can use. When you want to specify such templates, and I'm quite sure you won't, you have to follow this templates.json format. That's a little bit simpler. So you just specify a name, a description, and a repository path where the templates could be found. And that's it. Now, I have already prepared something for that, for this session here. So I have reduced the templates to one very simple starter template, and everything with microservice that uses Dapper and uses Azure Container Apps as hosting option. So we have a very reduced list. And now let's see how we can bring that into our system. So let's get back to the console. And let's do the AZD template source, and then we want first to remove the awesome AZD, and of course it's in my history because I had several dry runs for the session. So let's remove that. So it tells me it has removed that. So then I would hopefully see template source list is empty. Okay, that is good. Now I want to add one. So that was AZD template source add. And then I had to give it a key, which is in my case, I call it Depper ACA. That makes sense. I say it's of the type URL because I have stored it on GitHub. So there is an URL for that. And as location, yeah, I will use this one here. Now be aware, you of course have to point to the raw file in order to make it readable. For sure. So, okay. Then it tells me it added the template source. It's validating the template source. Now, if you take a look at the code, this validation is basically checking if it can marshal and unmarshal this JSON file or serialize, deserialize it, if it's a valid JSON file. You can put in basically every JSON file. Why do I know that? Because I tried it. It will validate. Nevertheless, it cannot be read out then. And it saved it. So let's check then again the template source list. This should now be our template source list. Coolio. We have the key, we have the name, we have the URL, and we have this link. Okay. And if I now do AZD template list, I just see my templates. So that's, from my perspective, especially for bringing it into companies, a very nice feature. Because this way you can really configure and craft your own templates if you want to, or restrict the number of templates that we want to use, and make that available for your developers in your company. So I think that is really, really nice and a really cool feature. Now, if I tried that out locally, and now I would like to have the awesome AZD templates back again, is how do I have to do that? Now, let's just do, so reverse the actions. So I would say AZD template source remove. I remove mine, so that's empty now again. And that's simply great, right? It tells me, hey, if you want to add more templates, you just remove one. Maybe you want to add some, because that makes sense. It tells me how to do that, which command to key in. That's super helpful from my perspective. And for the awesome AZD stuff, that's really easy. It's AZD template source add, and you just say awesome AZD. That's it. You don't need to specify any more things, because AZD knows, hey, that's my special thingy. That's my awesome AZD. And I want to have that. You also see there is no validation because it knows that it's valid. And with that, we can again shortly clear that mess and say AZD template list. And we are back again in our huge list of templates. Now, there are two things that I would like to bring to your attention with respect to this templates source command. So let's shortly bring up the help again. As I said before, you can specify the AZD templates via the type file, where you then have to enter the path. Now, I tried that out and I put in, and that was stupid, I'm honest, a relative path. Now, if you put in a relative path, then of course AZD knows it from the point where you specified this path. If you now switch directories, of course AZD does not know that anymore. So be aware that to hand in here the absolute path to your files. And the second thing is, you have seen maybe where I quickly jumped into my repository. that that was a public GitHub repository. There is currently one limitation that this adding of sources does not support authentication. So you cannot use any private GitHub repo or something that's hidden behind something where you need authentication. There is an issue open for that, and the ACT folks are looking into that because that's just the next logical steps that need to be taken. So you need to have also this this authentication mechanism if you want to specify additional sources. Now, yeah, that's already cool. So we have now the Azure Developer CLI. It helps us with setting up, let's say, brand new projects. It helps us there with this huge templates. And it allows us to configure, to tweak around the sources of the templates. Of course, we can bring in our own templates, we can modify the templates that are existing, but we can really then also make that available to all the developers in our organization by configuring it with the ACT template source command. So that is great. Now, what about existing projects? So let's say we don't start from scratch, which I guess most of us do, because we have some projects up and running. And what I did here is I'm a lazy guy. I copied the content of one of the templates from mainly the source part, removed all the infrastructure, removed everything else. So that would be the starting point, right? So you have an app, you have some tests, but that's basically it. Now, how would you start with bringing this project into the Azure Developer CLI? Well, there are basically two paths. There's the hard path and there is an easy path. I will shortly show you both. So let's switch back to the browser. Let's switch back to the learning part. So I think there is a short section about making your project compatible with the Azure Developer CLI. And that's kind of still describing the hard part. However, I would recommend to read that because it tells you about the basic layout of an ACT project and tells you how to use that and get started from that. So basically, if you have some existing project, I would go to the starter templates. Let's shortly jump to them on GitHub, which basically provide you of all the things around your source code. So you have the pipelines in there, you have GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps, you have the dev container setup, and you have the infrastructure as code, and you have basically a quite empty Azure YAML file, which gives you some examples on how to get started. It gives you some basic infrastructure setup, so mainly the base layout and the core folder, which contains all this nice reusable stuff, all the modules, but that's it. So basically what you can do now is you can take that template, bring in your source code in that, and then tweak around and get things started. So there is one important thing. I would highly recommend to do this exercise once when you start working with the Azure Developer CLI. Why? Because it really helps you to understand the mechanics. It really helps you to understand how things come together and how things work together. That's from my perspective important, and at least a few folks in your organizations should know how things work behind the curtains. Now, having said that, for sure, this is not a scalable approach from my perspective. So rolling something like this out over an organization with tons of existing projects, that won't do the trick. So what different options do you have? I just said that is the hard way. Is there an easy way? And yes, there is. The Azure Developer CLI team is great. It's listening to feedback, and there was, of course, this feedback. How do we get our existing projects under the Azure Developer CLI? The Azure Developer CLI is great, but how do we get our projects in there? And in September, the AZD team released a simplified way to initialize your application. It is kind of a new improved AZD init workflow, which allows you to run AZD init in a directory where your application code lives. And then as written here, the wizard type flow will kind of do some magic and will ask you if what it found out is correct. And then it will get your application in at least a decent shape with respect, especially to the infrastructure as code. Now let's try that out, right? As I said before, we have a directory where I have this coding in here, and this is as you can see, the app folder basically contains this API, and within the API we have basically the setup that we had before in the app. So let's go back here at the root, and now if I understood it correctly, I just have to key in AZD init and the rest will happen automatically. And yes, there is a wizard. So initializing an app to run on Azure AZD init. I want to use the code in the current directory. Yes, I want, because I want to initialize that. Now it does some scanning and it detected some stuff. So it detected that there is a TypeScript app in the API folder. Okay, it detected a TypeScript app in tests. Okay, that's something that makes no sense. And it detected that it needs a MongoDB. Okay, cool. Necessary to host the app on Azure Container Apps and Azure Cosmos DB API for Mongo API. Okay. Then I want to remove one detected service. I don't want this one. Okay. It's revising. It's telling me, is this now the way you want to set things up? Yes, this is the way I want to set things up. I keep it there. And of course I have to enter an environment name. So AZD, now let's call it easy init festive. Okay, cool. That's what happened here. Okay, then let's spin up some code and let me switch to the right coding window. 1 second. Yeah. Okay, so now you see the editor that was just opened. And as you can see here, okay, it's a little bit a slimmer layout, I would say. We don't have any workflows. And if, but we have a file that calls next steps. Okay, so let's take a look at that one. Let's go into the preview just once. Define them. So what can it do next? Provision infrastructure and deploy application code. Okay, configure my CI/CD pipeline. What was added? Okay, that's interesting. So what was added? It added an Azure YAML file, so it added the project configuration or the manifest, as I call it, and it added the infrastructure in a little bit of a different shape and form, I would say. So we have the app folder, okay. We have a modules folder now, no core folder, and a shared folder for resource modules. So they changed a little bit on the layout there. And then it tells me what exactly has been used. And as we can already see, the key vault and the monitoring is in there. So let's check that. We have the main.bicep. We have that, we have this. We don't have the abbreviations. We have the abbreviations. I was just shortly shocked. Yeah, here we go. Then we have the resource group. Okay, we have the monitoring. Cool. We have, of course, it's Azure Container Apps. We have registry. We have a key vault. Cool. And then we have our Cosmos DB. We have the API. Okay, that looks good. So we have no web front end. I dismissed that in my setup. So that's kind of done by Azure. The app layout is how I would expect it. And we have the shared thing, which is kind of a condensed way. So you don't get the full beauty of the core folder that we have seen before with all those additional modules. Now, from my perspective, that makes sense because you have an existing app and you have already done your setup, right? So you don't want to take a template as a starting point, but you want to bring the existing app into the Azure Developer CLI. So it makes sense not to overcomplicate things. We have the fetch containers module, so I do not fully get the difference here, but that's basically on me. And we have the Azure YAML file, which, which uses the directory name, which was in my case Brownfield, as the project name. That makes perfect sense. As a template, it tells you, okay, you used the kind of dynamic flow. Also with the AZD version number, that makes sense. And then you have an API in there. Yeah, the source was correctly found. Yeah, there is one thing that I have to mention. Currently, this easy init flow, no matter what your app is, will choose the container app as hosting environment. So if you have been working with the AZD for some time, you will find out that the team is really working in an iterative way. So it will first try to get something going, and then will refine that. And obviously the container app option was maybe also politically one of the best ways to get things going. So that's cool. So you have that one. What I'm a bit surprised, to be honest, is that they do not bring in the CI/CD pipeline. So here, I don't know if that pop-up appears in the stream. I don't think so. No. This one basically points to the starter template that I've shown you before. Yep, both point to the starter template that I've shown you before. You can also config that via AZD command. That's all possible. Now, why don't they bring that in? Maybe because if you have an app, you probably already have a pipeline running. I'm not so sure if they shouldn't just bring that in and you can delete it or that way. So yeah, I think that's a question of personal preferences. Of course, what's also in there is the .azure file. I jumped over that before, I think, which contains your environment information. So you have this easy init festive, where then there would be your configuration and your environment files. Okay, that's cool. Now, what I'm a bit surprised is how those things work. So how do they work behind the curtain? How does it know that it has it has a TypeScript project? How does it know that it uses MongoDB? So let's find that out. What I did is, and that's cool, because let's just switch that. Where is it? Show it to me. What I did is, let's first jump here. As you have seen, the Azure Developer CLI is an open source project, so the code is available. You can clone that, you can fork that, whatever. And in order to get things going, I cloned that. And now let's shortly jump to that clone. Okay, so here we go. I will shortly switch off the video capturing because I have seen that there are some issues, but you can still hear me. So where are we now? We are in the cloned Azure Developer CLI, where I have added one additional folder which contains the setup that we just had before. And well, the Azure Developer CLI really makes your life easy. You have a dev container that I've spun up, as you can see here, which contains all the relevant stuff. And you also have some launch.json that I have that allows you to attach to a process or to debug the Azure Developer CLI by issuing a very specific command. And I've copied that and added some steps in order to get a look into the easy init. So basically I just issue the command init and I specify a workspace. I could have done that with that, but well, I'm a lazy guy. So that's what I did here. And now debugging is nice. Now where do I have to set my breakpoints? And here again, the Azure Developer CLI has a very clear structure. Everything around the CLI is located under the CLI directory, AZD. And then you have I would say common setup where you have a folder with the commands. Here, this is the perfect entry point in order to start with debugging. So you have for each command one file, which has a quite uniform layout with some steps happening before in order to do the setup. Do some binding. That's kind of, as you can see here on the right hand side, due to the Cobra framework that is used for the setup of the commands. And then you have this run command, which basically does what it should do. Now, I have set a breakpoint now, one additional breakpoint. And what we'll do now is we will kick off the debugger in order to check what's going on behind the curtains. Now this debugger should fire up soon. And then we can see what is happening here. So first it checks basically if we have brought in any information on how to initialize the AZD project, and we have the init unknown, so we didn't provide any information. So what it will do now, it will prompt us what do we want to do, and I want to use the code in the current directory. I specified the working directory. Now this is not what I wanted to do. I want to do that in the terminal. And then what it does, well, it kicks off the initialization process, and here it, as I have selected it, it will kick off the initialization from app. So it will prepare a well-known file, the nextsteps.md that we already saw. And then what it does, it will call something that's called a repo initializer. So initializing the repo with an init from app functionality. So initialization from app. Now I already set a breakpoint a bit further down below, because what it does is it's using this app init functionality that has some detectors for the different languages that are supported by the Azure Developer CLI, which will then be fired against my directory or the different folders within my directory to check if there is a project that could be identified. Now this is really going now through each and every directory. You also see there are some patterns excluded, important to know. And what we have here now is I'm in a JavaScript detector, so it tries to detect a project. And how does it do that? Well, it tries to do that via the package.json file. Because if there is a package.json file, it's likely that it's a JavaScript project, right? So it's purely heuristics based how things are going. Now, as you can see, it's really walking through all the different directories in order to find something. So we have the .vs code, we have the app. It won't be happy there. Oh, we have the app API. Now this might make sense to go now in And now it still doesn't find anything. That's weird. I didn't find anything. It went through the different entries within the directory, of course, and there it found now a file that's called package.json, and yeah, it now clearly states that the JavaScript project or the language was inferred by the presence of a package.json, and then it continues with its heuristics-based evaluation of the projects, like checking for, based on the package.json file that it reads in, what dependencies are in there. So it checks, is there something like React? Is there something like jQuery? Is there something like Vue? Is there something like Angular? And it does the same for the database dependencies. So that's why it knows that we need to have MongoDB. So let's jump over that. And then it checks, do we have TypeScript files? Do we have JavaScript files? How many of them? And again, heuristics based, it says, okay, the project language is TypeScript because we have more TypeScript files than we have JavaScript files. That makes perfect sense. Now, it will do the same now for all the other directories, and it will also check if there is a Docker file. And I've deleted the Docker file because I want to show you, or I want to tell you something more later. Now, of course, it walks through all the directories. So now we have the tests folder where it will also find a package.json, which explains why it detected that tests file as a as kind of a project that it might want to initialize. And as we can see here, we have this test thingy, so we want to remove that again, as we did before. Yes. And we can confirm. We say we want MongoDB. We take another spin through the debugger. We say environment is easy in debug. And yeah, then we should be good to go and see something within our project, right? So let's shortly refresh that one. We have the festive sample, and yes, here we go. We have the next steps.md. We have the Azure YAML with the 000-dev. We have the infrastructure folder with the layout that we saw before, and we have the environment defined. So now we know how AZD knows. And I think that's super helpful. This easy init procedure really helps you in getting started with brownfield projects, so you don't have to do that manually. Also, I advise to do it at least once. But it also gives you, well, these detectors. And now if you might run into issues with bringing in your project into AZD with this easy init approach, well, maybe you find some bug or maybe you find some feature that you would like to see. It's open source, contribute. That would be great. Or maybe you can tweak your setup a bit and make it easier for AZD to find it. So you have two options here. And if you take a look, for example, for Python, that is not rocket science. So it's heuristics based. It's requirements.txt. If that's there, it's probably a Python project. If there is something like a fast API Flask, then it knows how to deal with that. So that's really great from my perspective, and that gives a lot of insight. Now, before I said, well, I removed the Docker file. Now I have Azure Container Apps as a hosting environment. Now, how does the AZD know then how to package things? And there is one more thing that I would like to show you. Now, we have seen that we can initialize things here. Now, what about this packaging with Docker? And there is one more feature that came out with the September release, which is now propagated already to beta stage, and that's support for cloud-native build packs. Now, cloud-native build packs is not an invention by the Azure Developer CLI. It's a CNCF project that is in the incubating stage, which is available on the buildpacks.io. And what this thingy does is it transforms your application source code into images that can run from any cloud. So basically what it does, it takes your application source code, and AZD already put a lot of knowledge in the manifest file. And combining that, it can easily build your Docker images. So if you want to learn more about Cloud Native Build Packs, I think that's a very good starting point here. If you have been around a bit longer, you might still know Heroku, you might know Cloud Foundry. And basically what Cloud Native Build Packs are, it's bringing together all those good and convenience features that have been there in Cloud Foundry and Heroku, and combining that and bringing that to the Cloud Native world with Cloud Native Build Packs. And well, AZD exactly helps you with that. It allows you to issue the command AZD package. And with that, instantiate the Cloud Native Build Packs. There's nothing that you have to install. The Paketo CLI, everything is there within AZD, and create those containers for you. So even if you have now a brownfield project that is not yet running on containers, that's not a big obstacle. You just have to do an AZD package, and AZD will do the rest for you. So now, wrapping things up, I have to say the recording gods are not with me today, so I have to remove the video camera again, because somehow encoding doesn't like my face, it seems. Now, I hope you had quite some joy with this session on the Azure Developer CLI. I hope you saw how useful the Azure Developer CLI is for new projects, using the templating mechanism, and how you can tailor that templating mechanism and the sources of the templating mechanism on your organization or company specific needs. Now, I hope you also saw that you can bring in your brownfield projects under the management of Azure Developer CLI, either by going down the manual path with the starter templates, or going down the AZD easy init flow, which allows you to leverage the heuristics that are implemented into the AZD init command and bring things to life there, with the cherry on top of the Cloud Native Build Packs. Now, with that, I'm at the end of today's session, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great time with the remaining Festive Tech Calendar, with all the other great sessions that are coming up. And I wish you now a very, very nice remaining festive season. Have some great holidays, have a happy Christmas, and have a great end and an even greater start into the new year. Until then, I wish you all the best, and see you next year again. Bye.